Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sam, and this is yet another segment of the Rush Hockey Podcast, here to catch you up on all Oilers news, but also news from around the NHL. The first thing we're going to discuss is we're going to go over the aftermath of the Oilers' loss of 2 RFAs. Then we're going to go over some projected lineups that the Edmonton Oilers have. We'll talk about maybe some potential trade deadline options, and then maybe look at some final remarks of what the Oilers can do or how we see the Oilers potentially making the Stanley Cup final again. So without further ado, let's get started. The offer sheet, for those of you who don't know, could be heard around North America. The St. Louis Blues offered the Edmonton Oilers Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg offer sheets, in which both of them have signed. The Oilers had made some moves to try to align for cap space and try to align to build replacement players or future assets for those players just in case we were going to lose them, but unfortunately, the story was written on the wall that Broberg and Dylan Holloway were no longer going to be Edmonton Oilers, which is unfortunate because the Edmonton Oilers really could use some young players. Now with the loss of Broberg and of Dylan Holloway, the team gets much older now, which is a great thing to have a veteran presence team, but we got to have young blood in the lineup. So the Oilers, prior to losing Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, sent out Cody Ceci to the San Jose Sharks, in which they got Ty Emberson, but they also attached a third-round pick with that trade to the Sharks to get Ty Emberson. He's projected to be a pretty good defenseman, maybe might be our bottom-pairing defenseman, could be up in the top 4. It's yet to be seen. We have to wait till the season starts. And then on top of that, we went out and got Victor Podkolzin from Vancouver in a trade that will allow us to have a winger in place of maybe Matt Savoy or Evander Kane when he goes on the LTIR. And it's unfortunate because all these moves that the Oilers were making, there was hope within Oilers Nation that maybe Broberg or Holloway, both of them could stay, at the very least one. As a fan, I want to say that losing Broberg is probably one of the hardest things for any team, especially the Edmonton Oilers, to go through. You have a young stud defenseman, and as you all know, those of you who watch a lot of hockey, stud defensemen, top 4 defensemen are very hard to come by. You don't just draft these guys and they turn into a top 4 defenseman. There's a little bit of luck that is involved with that. There's also player development. There's a lot of factors that go into developing a top 4 defenseman. Behind Broberg, we have some young defensemen developing, but they're not NHL ready. And we had the most NHL ready top 4 defensemen out there in Broberg. There could have been a scenario in which Broberg and Bouchard were going to be our top 2 defenders, which makes this very difficult. But that loss on the back end, hopefully we can find a way to recover from that throughout the season, maybe even recover at the trade deadline. Hopefully we can make it to the trade deadline by being in a playoff spot, and I'm confident we will, but anything can happen. It's the game of hockey. The next thing I want to address is the Dylan Holloway loss. The loss of Dylan Holloway to the St. Louis Blues. You guys are getting a great player. He is fast, he is quick, he is smart, he can put the puck into the net, and I think he's developed into an amazing star forward. Here's the problem. In Edmonton, he probably would not have played past the second line. He probably would have been a third liner or a fourth liner. So him going to St. Louis, he might have the opportunity to get to the second line or maybe even get to the first line. I don't know St. Louis's roster like that, but I know with Edmonton, there probably would be no space for him on the top 2 lines unless maybe something miraculous happened. But again, it's the same factor with losing Broberg. You lose a small portion of your team when you start getting away from some of these younger players who are developing. And what's interesting to note is that Ken Holland actually drafted 4 players, and all 4 players are no longer with the organization. Xavier Bourgault, gone. Reed Schaefer, gone. Broberg and Holloway, gone. So the Edmonton Oilers have essentially erased the draft history of Ken Holland, and I don't know why, because we did have some pretty decent players there, and Bourgault, I understand, probably wouldn't crack the lineup. I mean, Savoy has the better chance. But losing those 2 players is tough for any other team, which it also begs the question why the St. Louis Blues went after these 2 players when there were considerable amounts of players that are out there that are much better. But it is what it is. We have a second and a third round pick now that we can use for the trade deadline, or we can use in the draft. We can keep them and use them. Who knows? But with that being said, I think it's important now that we, as Edmonton Oilers fans and as hockey fans, just look at the Edmonton Oilers roster and see what we can find from this roster and where they end up going. See, we're looking at the Edmonton Oilers roster now. Obviously, we have our top 4 or top 6 players that are locked in. We have Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins going to man that first line. Ideally, Leon Draisaitl, Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson are going to be on that second line. The third line will be Adam Henrique with potentially Matt Savoy going there. We had Vasilevsky, Podkolzin, and then Evander Kane. Then we have Derek Ryan, Matthias Janmark, and Connor Brown. On the back end, we have Matthias Ekholm, Evan Bouchard, Darnell Nurse, Ty Emberson, Brett Kulak, Troy Stetcher, and potentially Josh Brown. We have a few options back there. Obviously, we have Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard in net. It's important to note that with this upcoming season, Darnell Nurse needs to step up his game. Now that CC is out, we want to make sure that I'm going to say it right now. As an Edmonton Oilers fan, I hope the Oilers made the right decision and moved Cody Ceci and made Darnell Nurse have a partner, or helped Darnell find a partner that will elevate his game. Darnell Nurse also has to elevate his game. If Cody Ceci goes to San Jose and performs much better and Darnell Nurse performs much worse, I'm going to come back here and chat. I'm going to come back here in these videos and I'm going to tell you that $9.25 million contract that Darnell Nurse has was not worth it, and we probably should have found a way to just offload a draft pick with it. I'm going to say it. That's just my conundrum with the salary. Darnell Nurse, great defenseman. I love him. I love having him on the team, but that dollar value just doesn't equate. So this year, now we've made the moves, Darnell Nurse has to step it up. I think we're going to have a really good, quick third, fourth line, however you want to put it together. Chris Knobloch could change the lines, but I think we have the opportunity to get in some young, fresh blood. We do have some young draft picks that are ready and primed and ready to be a part of the Edmonton Oilers roster. So maybe we see them join up and make a difference. I don't know. Hopefully it works. I don't know. We'll see. Next, we want to look at some maybe potential trade deadline options for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, there's not too many trade deadline options that I can see that are out there, but the Oilers are looking at some players that are kind of waiting for a contract right now, even in free agency. There's been talk about Tyson Barrie, maybe even Jeff Schultz. I think those are pretty good options, but as my opinion, personally, I don't think that we should go that route of getting some of the older veteran players that were here from the past to maybe come in and infuse some chemistry or some production from the back end. I think it's important that the Oilers go out and shop for a defenseman that is maybe available, that the Oilers could use, that's serviceable, potentially a top 4 defenseman. We can use that second round pick. We can use a first round pick, whatever it is that we need to do. Let's use it and try to get that. Stay tuned, because on the next video, I'll probably give more trade options. I'm going to go through and kind of study some of the players that are out there that are available, maybe even RFAs that the Oilers can go out and maybe offer sheet one of those defensemen that are out there. But we'll see what happens. If the Oilers make some moves during the season, great, but I think the Oilers probably will hold out until the trade deadline to make an acquisition. So we'll probably have to wait till then to see more potential trade candidates that could be available for the Oilers at that time. Last thing I want to say is final remarks on the whole Oilers situation and free agency. I will say I'm going to give the Oilers an absolute A+ for free agency in terms of signing players, but I'm going to give them an absolute F grade when it comes to hiring their GM. I'm going to give them a D grade when it comes to dealing with the RFA situation, and who knows what happens with Leon Draisaitl now. I'm hoping Leon Draisaitl stays with the Edmonton Oilers, but now with the Oilers roster getting a little bit older, does that keep the window open for Draisaitl and McDavid to want to stay and play here? Do the Oilers have a future moving forward? Because we have to consider, again, Matthias Ekholm, the loss of Broberg, Darnell Nurse, Evan Bouchard. Devin Bouchard, his contract's coming up. Connor McDavid, his contract's coming up. Leon Draisaitl has a lot of decisions to make. Could it be 3 to 4 years? Could it be 7 to 8? Me personally, I would love to see a 7 to 8 year contract out of Draisaitl, but again, we're going to have to wait and see. My last thing I want to say is to the GM of the Edmonton Oilers and to all the Edmonton Oilers fans, we gotta let's lock it in. Okay, let's go into this next season. Let's root for our team and let's push these guys back into the Stanley Cup final. Stan Bowman, get that contract signed with Leon Draisaitl. Please. Hey everyone, thank you again for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you guys have any questions, concerns, or comments, please don't hesitate to drop it into the comment section. I would be glad to be able to communicate with you guys and maybe even take some of your ideas and use them for a video. And as always, thank you again for the like, the subscribes. I appreciate that. We're almost at 100. If you like more content like this, don't hesitate to check out the playlist and go through some of the shorts. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you in the next video.